Hi, everybody. This is Ian Barr with RapidScale. I'm one of the cloud engineers here, and today we're going to be hosting a training webinar for the Cloud Portal Services Manager, CPSM. And this is where a lot of organizations who are using RapidScale's multi-tenant services can go ahead and manage their users and or hosted exchange services that they have with RapidScale. So we'll get started in a minute or two here. I'll give another minute or so for people to join. If you have questions during this training, you can go ahead and post them into the GoToWebinar chat, and we'll address them at the end of the tutorial. So feel free to post those in the GoToWebinar chat as needed. Again, we'll give people another minute here, and then we'll get started. Okay, it's approximately 12:02 Pacific, so we'll go ahead and get started here at this point. Again, anybody who joined after, this is Ian with RapidScale. I'm one of the cloud engineers, and we're going through a Cloud Portal Services Manager training then I'll go ahead and cover managing users as well as hosted exchange services that are part of the multi-tenant exchange services that we provide different organizations. So at this point, the website for Cloud Portal Services Manager is this guy right here, cp.rapxp.net. And we can go ahead and once you get to this page, it should appear this way for everybody. And you can go ahead and enter your credentials in the UPN format, similar to an email format where it's username at your domain, and then put in your associated password. Okay, and then once you get logged in, it'll give you to kind of a landing page here, and we can go ahead and get started. So what we want to do first is take a look at the users within our organizations. So here we can go to the users menu and a few different options, but we selected users to view the existing users within the organization. We can also go directly to a new user. A couple other options that might be available are bulk user import if you're creating many or modifying multiple users. This is a nice tool. And then this one for email configuration we'll jump into later. You can also, once you're in the users menu, you'll also have similar menu options on the left side here. Both will get you to a similar option. So we're looking at the existing users. They provide us the full name, their UPN. UPN is the user principal name, and this is really what people log into their services with RapidScale with. It's typically the primary email address for that user with a mailbox, but some organizations might have a different logon to what their primary email address is. They can they can set it up however they want for a lot. Then the last one here is the services that are assigned to that user account. Currently, we see that these users have all the green status icon, and the green status icon represents, depending on what you're looking at in CPSM, they'll have different status icons typically, and the green one represents a state of provision. There is a gray status icon for not provisioned, so it lists in CPSM, but there's no real backend for that account if it's not provisioned. There is a orange or orange or yellow status icons, and those represent states of provisioning or queued to be provisioned. So usually those are temporary. And then there's a red status icon, and as you can imagine, that's a state of failure, and usually give you an error as to why that failed. So yeah, usually when you're viewing users, you probably should be seeing a green status icon for the most part. So we'll go ahead and get started with creating a new user. Again, you could do that from the users menu, or you can do it now that we're in the users area. We have that option underneath management. So we can click on it either way. It's going to have some required fields that are designated by the red asterisks, and then additional fields that you can be populated you know, depending on your organization, you can go ahead and populate those. Not required, but you know, if you populate some of this information and they had an Exchange mailbox, this would list some of this information would go ahead and list for that respective mailbox in the global address list for that user. So they can take advantage of that, but the required fields definitely need to be filled out. The UPN, again, that's the user principal name, and that's what the logon will be for this account or mailbox. There's different domains that are associated with each customer, and these two domains are ones that we have available here for this organization. For your respective organization, if you had one email domain or multiple, they should all list here for which one you want to assign to the UPN. So we're just going to keep it at the default, the primary domain for this customer, and we'll type in a respective UPN for this account. And once I tab, it actually goes ahead and populates the next username field. This part is probably a little bit confusing to some. It does say username here, which a lot of people would think is their logon, but in reality, this username line here is mostly for the backend purposes. Again, in this multi-tenant environment, to go ahead and keep accounts separated, there's different ACLs, as well as in this case here, what happens is there's a username that's assigned with a customer-specific code. So that's what's happening here, is that we're setting up a username with that code. Again, it's mostly for backend purposes. The user really never sees this username. Again, when they are logging into different rapid scale services, whether it be CPSM or a hosted Exchange mailbox, for instance, they're using their UPN to log on. So when it taps and auto creates this, you really just can just leave that as it is and move on to the next line. So here we'll go ahead and put in their first name, so the first, and then put in their respective last name. And you can, once you tab, you can leave the display name as it is, or you can modify as that as you need. Again, we can go ahead and fill out other fields as you intend, and then once you are done, or once you've filled out those, we'll go on to the next part, which is required, and that's password. The only password requirement that we have for our multi-tenant services today is a minimum character length of 7 characters. No other password requirements are required, so complexity, history, etc. But you can go ahead and it just has to meet the 7-character minimum. So you can go ahead and put in as a best recommendation to make it as complex as possible, but it will accept anything as long as it's a minimum of 7 characters in length. For our purposes here, we can go ahead and assign additional account settings. You can set the password to never expire, which is typical, but you could set it to expire and you'd have more options. You can change password at logon if the account is disabled, etc. So additional account settings there. If this was an administrator account for somebody who's the customer point of contact or the admin who is creating users, within CPSM or changing the services, we could assign security roles to this account. So the most common one is probably the user and service administrator. This will pretty much allow that account to go ahead and create user accounts, modify them as needed, or the respective services for that organization too. So you guys watching this, you probably, if you have an account within CPSM already, you probably are assigned this security role already. If you want to assign additional people, you could go ahead and assign that security role and there are other more limited ones like partial user administrator, which is just to reset passwords. But this one here is to go ahead and kind of do everything. And you can even get more granular by selecting the custom role. But this one is one of the most common roles that can be assigned to organizations. But this account that we're setting up today doesn't need any of that, so we'll just leave it as it is. And again, we've entered in all the required information. What's happening down here in email addresses is that when you set up a new user, if you do not specifically assign an email address, then CPSM will go ahead and automatically create an email address that is based off the UPN for that account. So once we go ahead and create provision, CPSM will go ahead and create an email address called newuser5@rsdemo.net in this case. However, if we do not want that to be the primary email address, or we want to set additional emails for this account, we can go ahead and set that here and put in our what we want to be a primary email address, and also go ahead and set up additional email aliases as needed. Right now, we're just going to go ahead and leave it at the auto creation. So again, I've put in my required fields, and typically when you want to make a change in CPSM, after you've made the changes to that item that you're modifying, you need to go ahead, when you're ready to commit that, you need to go ahead and provision that change. So we'll do that now. Now we're on step 2 of this new user creation process, and that's to assign services to this account. Depending on your organization, you might have various services that are available to your organization, and in this case here, it has the following services of hosted apps and desktops, hosted exchange, mail archiving, which can't be provisioned until hosted exchange is provisioned, that states here, and Skype for Business. In this case here, we want to go ahead and get this account set up with a mailbox. So we want to go ahead and get the hosted exchange service provision. And as I stated earlier, the status icons here, they're all set to the gray, which is that not provisioned. So again, these are available, but not currently in place for this account yet. So here, if we want to get them a mailbox, we want to provision the hosted exchange service. There's only one user plan available for this account, and it's the Exchange 2013 50 gigabyte plan. If you just want to give this account a mailbox, you just select this item and then click provision. You do have additional user mailbox level exchange functionality that you control within the advanced options. So if we want to add this mailbox to an existing distribution group, we can go ahead and do so here. You could go ahead and type in part or all the distribution group name, or use wildcards like asterisks. And you could go ahead and find the existing distribution group that you want to add that account to. Go ahead and add it as needed, and then apply those changes. So now when we go ahead and set up this mailbox, not only will it create a mailbox for this account, but it'll also be adding it to the respective distribution groups that we modified here. You don't need to do that. I mean, if you want to modify that later, you can go ahead and add distribution group membership, email forwarding, or mailbox rights at a later time when you need to for this account, but you can do it at the mailbox creation as well. And so email forwarding, that's again where you want to go ahead and forward this mail item sent to this mailbox. You could forward that to another mail item within the organization. Again, if we want to search for other mail items that we could send it to, you can go ahead and select the mail item that you want to forward this to. And then this checkbox here is important. If you want to have the message that was sent to this mailbox go to both the forwarding mailbox and a forwarding address and this mailbox as well, then you check this mailbox. If you only want it to go to the forwarding address, then you leave this unchecked, and messages that were sent to this mailbox will actually just go to the forwarding address alone. We don't want to set up forwards, so we'll cancel that. There's mailbox rights as well. Primarily, the mailbox rights, these are good for the full mailbox access and send as. These are excluded of each other. So if you want to go ahead and assign another mail item to have full mailbox access to John Smith's mailbox, you can go ahead and assign that here, and then go ahead and type in who's going to have that full mailbox access. and we could go ahead and add those in here. If we wanted to go ahead and have somebody set up with both full mailbox and send as, same process. After we go ahead and select those permissions we want, find the person we're setting this up to, and now we can go ahead and you can identify here in the permissions that some of them have full mailbox access, and then some of them have an additional access of send as. So in this case here, I don't want to go ahead and set up anybody with any mailbox rights for this today, so we're just going to go ahead and leave it at the distribution group membership that I set up, and I'm now ready to go ahead and provision this mailbox. As you can see here, it's going through the provisioning state of that orange status icon. Provisioning hosted exchange is about a 30-second operation, so this will be done shortly, and then we should expect to see it be a green status icon once it's done. And at that point, we have gone through the steps necessary for setting up a new user, and then in provisioning them with a service here of a hosted exchange mailbox, and now they have, well, in a few seconds, they're going to go ahead and have a mailbox set up for this account. Again, if we wanted to, we could set up additional services for this user, but at this point, we just wanted to go ahead and get them set up with a mailbox. Now we can go back to the users menu. We see it. We can now see our respective new user is part of our organization, and they have one service assigned to them. And again, we would be able to see those respective services. We can go back to that user again. And we can see the changes that we made earlier. The username field is no longer editable once that's in place. So again, that's more for backend purposes. Email addresses, as I mentioned earlier, when an email address is not set, CPSM will just go ahead and assign that account the same email address syntax that the UPN is set to. So in this case here, new user 5 at rsdemo.net. We could change that if we want, and go ahead and add an additional email as needed. And only one email address can be the primary SMTP address, and that's essentially where, when messages are sent outbound from this mailbox, by default, it's going to be coming from the primary SMTP address. So now there's 2 email aliases associated with this account and the mailbox. And we'll go ahead and provision the change that we just made. Similar behavior here where in that provisioning state, we saw temporarily that it was provisioning, and now it's done, and then that change is committed. When looking at your organization, what we looked at so far was kind of creating a new one and editing just a single user. We have multi-user selection options available by expanding that entry here on our left navigation panel. And once I've expanded it, you'll now notice that there's checkboxes available to these to the users in this organization. So I'm currently we're in this view, we can see all the users in the organization. So I can go ahead and select the checkbox at the top to select all users if I wanted to modify multiple at once. I could do a similar from the left side here. If there was like 400 users within the organization, and you may not see them initially on this first page. If I wanted to edit more than just on this first page, I could select all users instead. And it tells me how many I've selected here. It doesn't let me modify my own account that I'm currently logged in with, but I can modify all the other ones in multi-user selection. If I don't want to select everybody, I can go ahead and unselect certain ones that I don't want applied to, or of course in reverse, I can go ahead and modify multiple accounts at the same time too. We can go ahead and disable or deprovision those accounts. We can also modify their services for multiple accounts. So I might be able to go ahead, and the blue status icon represents the status in multi-users where it doesn't know what the status is for these multiple users at this current time. So it's blue status icon, but similar behavior. Once we go, if we were to go ahead and modify, if we wanted to go ahead and provision a mailbox service for these users, you know, we can go ahead and do so in the multi-user selection, and it's going to go ahead and provision out now the hosted exchange service for the accounts that I selected, in this case 2. So it's going to take about a minute for this one because it's now doing hosted exchange for 2 accounts. And then in the end, when this job is done, it would be a green status icon. I can leave this. It's a job created now, so I can leave the screen. I don't need to hang out here anymore, and then that will get finished in about a minute's time. At this point, we've gone over multi-user selection a little bit. In your navigation, you can also do different filtering to go ahead and make it easier to find users if you have a larger organization. So we could go ahead and show only the users who have a surname, last name of S, and it'll filter out those. I didn't mention this yet, but the way that it currently sorts your view is by last name when you're looking at your organization here. So we're seeing everybody listed out as a last name, alphabeticalized by last name. But again, if we want to go ahead and, I must have clicked on D. If we want to go ahead and show or filter out by any of those fields, but we don't have to do it by last name. We can do it by other attributes as well. So you can go ahead and limit it down to the view down to whatever you filter it to. Here right now we're viewing a maximum of 20 per this organization on this, or to show up to 20 results on this site, but we can change how many results it'll show if you have a larger organization or if you want to limit it down the view to something more compact. So if we set it to 10, now we have 2 pages worth of people in our organization. And then we can also go ahead and change the searching. So if I wanted to find a specific user, like the one that we just created, I can go ahead and type in parts of their attributes and hit enter to search on that, or click the search, and it'll go ahead and bring up that respective user. One of the things I like to do is if I want to sort it by service, those that have hosted exchange and they are currently provisioned, we can take a look at all the accounts that have the hosted exchange service and currently provisioned and search on that. And we got 14 accounts. So a lot of these have hosted exchange mailboxes, but some of them may not. So if we want to find out who doesn't have a hosted exchange mailbox, we can change the status to not provisioned. Now we see the reverse. Most of these accounts don't have any services, but a couple of them do have a service, but they're just not the hosted exchange service. We take a look at this one, and they have the hosted apps and desktops. So you can do different searches based on the advanced search down here too. So this was a lot of the user menu editing for user accounts. We went through adding a new user and editing a user, but if we want to get rid of an account, we can go ahead and do that too. If we don't want to get billed for this account anymore, our John Smith, new user 5, he retired yesterday, so and we've decided that we don't need his mailbox anymore. We can go ahead and get rid of this account and its respective services. Before we get rid of it though, again, you can go to, if you're not ready to do that, your organization, when a person retires, they might want to just reset the password and disable the account first. You can definitely do those options from within CPSM here for these cloud accounts, and set a password after the person's left to something different. Yeah. And then additionally, if you want to disable the account, go ahead and do so here. So we can go ahead and just disable the account and reset the password, and that account still exists, and its respective services are still associated with that account. They're still billable typically. So just got to keep that in mind. You can definitely keep that account around for as long as your organization needs. And if it's assigned any respective services, they'll just be billable. But it's up to your organization, of course, when you need to go ahead and get rid of said accounts. When you're ready to go ahead and get rid of this account, though, as you've decided that I don't need this account anymore and I don't need his mailbox, I don't want to be billed for it anymore, we want to go ahead and remove it. But you'll notice here when you're editing John Smith 5 that delete is not an option. And if we hover over it, when I say it's not an option, you'll notice it's not highlighted. But if I hover over it, it says permanently delete a deprovisioned user. So we need to delete deprovision this account first. So you can't delete an account until it's deprovisioned first. So that's what we'll do. We're going to go ahead and it's currently provisioned. We can see that by the green status icon, and we can deprovision this account. And it says, are you sure you want to do this? And we just want, so if you don't want to do it, just make sure you hit cancel. But if you are ready to move forward, go ahead and deprovision that account. And again, deprovisioning, it's going to remove the backend, a lot of the backend from this account. So now it's in a not provisioned state, and it still lists on CPSM, but a lot of the backend infrastructure doesn't exist for this account anymore. And now in a deprovisioned state, or not provisioned state rather, where it's a gray status icon, we can now see that delete is an option. And I'm ready to go ahead and remove this account now, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. In a few seconds, we're going to see that we're down to 19 users, and John Smith 5 is no longer part of our organization, no longer getting any of the services provided by RapidScale at this point. So next month, no longer getting billed by John Smith, or for John Smith. So we took a look at new user creation, editing users, and even deleting a user. And in CPSM, we can take a look at some of the, and we also took a look at some of the user level exchange functionality. But if you want to modify some of the organizational exchange functionality, we can go ahead and do that from the services menu. And we'll see an option for exchange here. And it gives us a few different options. We can see the exchange summary for the organization. But the most common ones are going to be the contacts, external mail contacts, distribution groups, folders, or resource mailboxes. These are the most common functions to edit for your organization. So you can see those or edit those as needed. We'll go to distribution groups. Again, we only see one distribution group for this organization. Your organization may have more or less. But you're going to, when you go to distribution groups, you'll see the existing ones. We can go ahead and modify that as needed. Right now, this distribution group doesn't have an email address, so let's go ahead and get it one because it really won't be effective without an email address. So we'll go ahead and type in, similar to a mailbox, we'll go ahead and assign an email address similar to its name. And when we click update, then it's going to have an alias assigned. So we can choose to edit that if needed, but typically that'd be good. And then we have senders require authentication. This checkbox is important. Essentially, what it represents is if you want to have this distribution group be able to be emailed to from both internal users within your organization, but also external users within outside of the organization, you would leave this unchecked, so that both people within rsdemo.net can email it, but also people like John Doe at gmail.com. If he knew about the email address all at rsdemo.net, he could email that if that's what you guys want to have happen. If you don't want John Doe at gmail.com or others external to your organization to email this distribution group, go ahead and select the checkbox for sender requires authentication. Essentially, that means that they need to be an authenticated user to be able to email this distribution group and essentially internal to your organization. So we have modified the email portion of this distribution group. We can go ahead and modify the memberships. If I want to get rid of Dylan, I can go ahead and do that. It'll ask on a removal, it'll ask if you're sure about that. We'll choose yes. Then if we want to add in others, I can go ahead and find others. Again, like you can type in part of the name here. So if I wanted to type in test, I have a one test account. Let's see here. If I wanted to type in, if I typed in D, I really have it opened up, but it's restricted to anybody with a D in the name. Actually, that's not a good example because demo has D in the name. Let's go with F. Yeah, there's only one account, but you get the idea. Depending on what the syntax is that you put in the search, it'll go ahead and filter it out for that. So we want to go ahead and add Mr. Bill Fern into this distribution group, and we've gone ahead and done so at this time. You probably have noticed that though they have different contact cards. One of them is a contact. One of them is an actual mailbox within the organization. So and then the general tab that we saw earlier. We can modify the name if we wanted to, modify the mail tip. This is on the top of your Outlook client. If there's associated with the mail tips, depending on what that mail item you're looking at. So we can place a mail tip there if we wanted to, respective to this item, distribution group. And of course, we can choose to hide this from the address book if we wanted to do so. So then they won't appear in our address list anymore. Let's take a look at some of that behavior too. If I logged into OWA or the multi-tenant cloud mail services, I can go ahead and log into my mailbox. And again, the webmail address for the multi-tenant exchange services is webmail.rsapps.com. So those with a hosted exchange multi-tenant, known as Cloud Mail with rapid scale, that's available to go to by webmail.rsapps.com. So once we put in our proper credentials, we'll go to our mailbox, and my mailbox here is kind of empty, unfortunately. But here, it's the mailbox nonetheless, and I can see other things in the mailbox, including my calendar, people, and here I would be able to see, the all user groups. Yeah. I think I did not choose to save my distribution group yet, and because it didn't have an email yet, it was not actually listing in the in our groups there. But now I have a proper distribution group that has an email associated with it. So now, if I go back to our, if I go back to my address book, I can now see I have a distribution group, and it has the respective members that I have associated with it, and it has my email address that I have associated with it too. So not only do we have a mailbox that we logged into, but we have a, we can see the respective items that were part of that organization that you did in CPSM for Exchange. You can create external mail contacts. So again, like these might be, if I have somebody outside of my organization here, and I want to go ahead and have them populate in the address book, so that I can go ahead and easily email this person or even add them to an address book, because now they're going to be a mail item within my organization. I can create an external mail contact for that respective account. So we might do something like John Smith. Again, you have to put in the required fields, but the other fields are optional. It can definitely be populated. And then email address. So John Smith, he's external to my organization. His is John Smith at yahoo.com. So, now now I can go, or shortly rather, I'm going to have this mail contact be available to my organization as a mail contact. I could choose to hide this from address book too if I wanted to. So now I have a mail contact for John Smith at yahoo.com. Again, similar behavior here. We should be able to go ahead and go to our mailbox, our hosted exchange mailbox that we're accessing with OWA, Outlook Web App, and see our respective mail contacts, including John Smith, who we just created. And now he's available to send to. So if I'm going to go ahead and email out a few people in my organization, I can go ahead and send to those persons. And find that those respective mail objects in there and send to. Public folders, if your organization uses public folders, it would be listed here. Currently, or we don't enable them by default, but if your organization requests it, we can enable it. It's one of those things where if you're not familiar with public folders, Microsoft's tried to kill it off several times, but there's been so much feedback too that a lot of companies need it. So it's still around. A lot of organizations live and breathe with it, but some organizations, they just have a few calendars in it, and others don't use it at all. So if you want to use that, definitely just let, if it's not already enabled, let a rapid scale employee know about that, and or the rep field support know about that, and they can get it enabled for you in a short time, and you can start using public folders within that within your organization. Resource mailboxes, these are common to like conference rooms or maybe equipment. So if you want to go ahead and set up a calendar for that your organization you can use for your different conference rooms. Like if I have one that's called the big conference room, we just go ahead and create its name and then decide what type it is, if it's a room or equipment, and then I can put in additional optional settings to it. But I just want to go ahead and get my resource mailbox up for my calendar, and similar here. After a few seconds, this resource mailbox will be finished to be provisioned and created for my organization. While that's going, we'll take a look at the next item here, mail disclaimers. A mail disclaimer can be set up for your organization. You know, this would typically be appended at the end of a message, and you can just have it wrap at the end. And you know, you might want to only have it sent out to those external to your organization. So this can be modified for everybody for your organization, or you could just not choose to have one at all. And but that's a mail disclaimer can also be available for your organization and their mailboxes. We jump back to resource mailboxes, and I see that my big conference room is now created. So now I can go ahead and jump over to a new calendar, and actually I want to create a new meeting. Meeting request would actually be it'd be easier in calendar. In OWA, OWA is pretty good nowadays, but some of the functionality is a little bit still easier in Microsoft Outlook client. But you can still do it. You just have to go to your calendar first. And so I created that resource mailbox, big conference room. So now I want to go ahead and create an event in it. So I'm going to go to the location. And I'm going to choose to add a room, and it has my resource mailboxes available. So I can go ahead and select the resource mailbox that I want to set up or assign it to. Meeting with John, and I could go ahead and actually let me go ahead and see if I can add John to it, or who is in my organization. Yeah, I got John. Okay, so now I can go ahead and add in our members and set it up for the time and date. If it's all day, this one's only going to be 30 minutes. It's going to start at 8:30, and add in any more persons to that. But if I'm good to go here, I can address, put in, of course, a body of my message. But if I'm ready to send this off, now I've got it signed to the resource mailbox, and we can go ahead and open up that resource mailbox. So what do I call it? It's big conference room. Now I can see the conference, the big conference room only in my calendar, and it has that respective meeting that we set up, and that's assigned to that new resource mailbox. So those are some of the organizational level functions that you can control with Exchange, and that pretty much will go ahead and wrap things up here. Again, as an overview, we went over new user creation with CPSM, editing users and their services assigned to that, and getting around CPSM to some extent too with multi-user selection, the filters, and searching. We went ahead and removed the user, retired that user, so it no longer would be a user in CPSM and have no longer respective services and no longer a billable item. We also took a look at some of the Exchange level functions for a user and the organization, and you know, how we can go ahead and control those. And depending on what we're doing, some of those options may be available for the user level or exchange level, or the organization level, rather. If anybody have any questions, go ahead and post those in the chat, and we'll have our marketing team bring those up at this time.
Yeah, we do currently have 3, Ian. And as you said, if you guys currently have any more questions that you want to send them over in that questions panel. So first up is, I have old users showing who haven't worked at our firm for ages or have had their mailboxes closed. Should they be showing?
Yeah, the big thing about retired users is the big thing is the services column. If you're a retired user, and again, if you want to go ahead and for whatever your business purposes are, you want to keep that respective services, like you want to keep that mailbox around, then that's your organization's decision, and you can definitely do so. But if you have decided that A, I don't need that mailbox anymore for this retired user, and B, I don't want to get billed for it anymore, then we want to, again, you need to not have you need to make sure that retired user doesn't have any respective services. But probably you just want to remove that account and their respective services as a whole. And that's it probably would be best then if you don't need their services anymore that RapidScale offers for that user, to go through the deprovision and delete state. If you want to get rid of one specific service, you could go to that to that respective user and deprovision that service. But again, like if it's retired and they're gone, I would recommend just going through and deprovisioning and deleting them at a minimum. So yeah, if it's here and it's got a service associated with it, then you're probably still getting billed for it today, I would assume. And if you don't need that anymore, then yeah, go ahead and actually retire them in CPSM.
Perfect. All right, next we've got, does creating a user create an email, Skype, and log in to a computer, or do you have to select that some way?
Okay. Creating a user, go ahead and, I'm sorry, repeat that last part again, Summer?
Yeah, does creating a user create an email, Skype, and log in to a computer, or do you have to select that some way?
Yeah, when you're going ahead and creating a user in CPSM, it's, I mean, without assigning any services to it, it's just a user in essentially Active Directory, but if, in the cloud Active Directory. And then you assign services to it, like the hosted Exchange mailbox, and that's all you've done so far. Is if you've created that user and you've gone ahead and created a mailbox for them, now they have a host Exchange mailbox, but you want to go ahead and access that mailbox. So you're going to need to go ahead and take additional steps to go ahead and access that mailbox in different ways, and that might be, via OWA, as we went through here. You can go to the OWA address and access their mailbox by putting in their respective credentials, or you could go ahead and, of course, access that Exchange mailbox with your Microsoft Outlook client or an ActiveSync device like iPhone or Android, for instance. But you're going to need to configure those email clients, like your Outlook clients or ActiveSync, to go ahead and access that new mailbox. RapidScale has documentation on how you can go ahead and configure those type of email clients, like an Outlook client or ActiveSync device. But yeah, typically you're going to need to go ahead and configure those respective email clients to access that newly available hosted Exchange mailbox. Hopefully that addressed your question, but please, if you need to follow up, go ahead and post it in the chat again.
Perfect. Okay, next up, do users log in with the password that you set here in CPSM, or is it automatically linked to the account created in Active Directory?
So what we're looking at here are, in this organization, we're dealing mostly with cloud-only accounts here. Let me get back to 28. So they are, I mean, by cloud-only, they only exist in the Cloud Mail cloud. They have no other association. If you have a remote Active Directory with your organization, a lot of these accounts do not have, I mean, what we went through rather was creating a cloud-only account. It is possible to configure what is called AD Sync for an organization, Those require, it's a type of service that would run on your respective remote Active Directory, their domain controllers. And so it is possible to go ahead and set up a sync with the remote Active Directory, a one-way sync, and it would sync over the respective accounts that you put in that scope for sync over to Cloud Mail, and it would A, create those accounts, and B, you would then remotely manage those. We do have a few of those accounts in here, actually. We can identify that they're a synced account because of the up arrow next to their icon. And if we edit that user, it's user properties, but it tells us it's an AD sync user where it's only managed by the remote domain. And all these fields are actually uneditable. So this is a case where it is a synced account, and in its case here, the password is going to be part of that remote Active Directory. Whenever that remote Active Directory account changes for Dylan Portis, it's going to go ahead and update this Cloud Mail account. So we don't control the password here for a synced account. Now, in a cloud-only account, as we had, where we are modifying everything and as this exists in the cloud, then this is the password. What you put in the password field here is the password for that, for the respective services on that account. So the hosted Exchange mailbox, if they had hosted apps and desktops, the password that's entered here is the password they're going to log into for those respective services. So hopefully that addresses your questions, but again, post a follow-up if there's something else you want me to touch on there.
All right. Next up, so we just used RapidScale for Skype for Business. How is that setup completed?
How is that setup completed? That is also going to be if you have that respective service for your organization, you'll see here like we have it here. A lot of times there's not much configuration for the Skype for Business. You can go ahead and modify the SIP address if needed, but most of the time this will be the same. The SIP address, what their logon is essentially to the Skype for Business. You can modify that, but you probably want to keep that the same as the logon for the account. And that's going to be mostly it that you need to go ahead and control with the Skype for Business line. So for adding this account to your Skype for Business accounts that you have already for the organization. So if we want to go ahead and get this person, if you have Skype for Business with RapidScale, you'll have this service available. And then, if you want to get this respective user set up with Skype for Business, again, not much to change here. We can just go ahead and provision this service out, and then this user will shortly be ready and will be an available account in the Skype for Business for this organization. If this is the first time you're setting up Skype for Business for your organization, there are some other steps that have to be done for the organization to go ahead and get Skype for Business ready for everybody. Usually those are like DNS changes. But as far as if you've already gone through the initial implementation and now you're just adding one user to Skype for Business, not much to change there. You just need to get that Skype for Business service ready for that user. And as you can see there now, for our respective user.
So that's within the user who already exists, because they kind of had a follow-up question that what about if you're adding a new user to Skype?
Yeah, same thing. What we went through earlier. We went through the new user creation earlier, and there was two steps of what we did. We created the user and we provisioned services. Previously, the first time we did that, we only set up the hosted Exchange service. But if you wanted to get somebody the Skype service, you would be doing that in step 2 of the new user creation of assigning them that Skype for Business service.
Perfect. And is it within there that you can add like the phone number? Sorry, there's just more follow-up questions coming in for the Skype for Business.
Yeah, that should be the case. I'm not to be honest, I'm not the Skype for Business one of the subject matter experts on it, so it's kind of new to me on some of those Skype functionalities. That part you might need to go ahead and contact the RapidScale support to go ahead and get that further clarification. If you want to modify, if that service is available to go ahead and have a phone number assigned to it, then that probably can be edited there. But the RapidScale support can go ahead and get you further details on if that's an available option to go ahead and how that would be performed. Yeah, I mean, right now this was more tailored towards hosted Exchange and users but I mean, depending on your organization, you might have Skype for Business. I think that's editable there.
Yeah, and we can take that Skype for Business conversation offline. So I will get that question asker's email and connect them with the right resources. The last question that I see currently is a VPN account created for any user created?
No, these are not specific to any other services besides the services that are available in as a multi-tenant. So there's none of the services here are associated with any type of VPN account. Again, depending on the services for your organization, these can vary about which multi-tenant services are available to your organization, but none of these have any type of VPN functionality. So no, I mean, when creating users within the CPSM, they don't have any association with it with a VPN account.
All right, and I think that is the end of questions that we have gotten. I will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone who has joined today's call, so please feel free to respond directly to that if you guys do have any other follow-up questions to today's training. But other than that, Ian, I think we are good to go.
All right, thanks for everybody's time.
Thanks so much, you guys. Have a good day.